So Lee, we'll come to you for this one. So I know we had a really good discussion, all of the panelists last week about it. And I think just the future of testing, what are your thoughts, and what way is testing going?
Wow. Where to start with that one? This feels like a whole meetup or even an all-day conference all on its own. But I will give you an insight into what's in my tiny brain. I think with testing, just like everything, like fashion and with tech, it goes through trends. And if I think back to 2011, James Whittaker stood on a stage in Manchester and announced that testing was dead. We saw some fallout from that. We saw some CTOs go back and just cancel their test teams almost overnight. And James Whittaker got a lot of flack for that, to be honest. And the other trends I've seen is this trend to, so from testing was dead, people got rid of their test teams, then went, shit, we need our test teams back, and re-employed testers again. And Google did in 2009. They got rid of all their testers. 2011, employed them all again. So we've had the testing is dead trend. And then we've had this automation trend, haven't we, that's hit for many, many years. And I think the latest trend will be the following. When I recruit, when I look for a great tester, I no longer look for an automation tester. If you have automation testers or an automation team, that is a handoff. And I don't believe in agile or being, showing agility. I believe in reducing those handoffs. So for me, I think the way the shape of testing needs to be is testers need to carry that metaphorical toolbox around with them. And they can open that toolbox in the day and they can pull things out, certain skills, certain traits, certain behaviors. And I'll just bring some of those to life. Question asking is a key skill. Every tester should have that in their toolbox. Every tester should be able to ask questions around quality of security testing, performance testing. They don't need to be the person that does it. They need to drive those rich conversations. In the toolbox, they need to be able to understand the different layers and pair with devs and talk about unit testing. They should be code savvy. Okay, so I'm being controversial now. They should be code savvy, or at least be able to write code as well. They should be able to talk through the stack. The automation should be minimal at UI and massive down the stack the further you go, so shift left. I think as well that toolbox, it's going through the agile testing quadrants and driving those conversations, being the SME for quality and testing, not just in the squad, but outside. So we know all about shift left, but how about this for shift right? Shift right to me means pressing stop as an agile team or any team that you are in and giving the software to the user and getting that quantitative and qualitative feedback from the users. And that I feel is a skill the testers need. And if we think about other trends, think about cloud, the skills of the tester in cloud, you have to think about scalability, performance, security. They are absolutely key. Testing for money, testing for costs. Since when has that been a skill of a tester? But it will be. And if we then think about all the different technologies, IoT is all massively messaging based. Big data is all around performance and security. AR, VR, these are all technologies we've got to get used to. Voice. So I'll give you an example. When Alexa came out, I went and bought the Alexa the day it came out in the UK. I went and bought it because I was curious. I then thought, I want to build my own Alexa skill, but I don't have any skills. So I went knees deep into the AWS Amazon Alexa Developer Toolkit. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Try saying that. I haven't even had a beer yet. And I started learning how to code my own Alexa skill, and I fell over. I fell flat on my face, so I started pairing with somebody, and we got so far, and we fell over. So we went into a mobbing mode, and a mob of 6, we built our first Alexa toolkit, our first Alexa skill. And from that, from building it, I now understood how to test it. And I think this is part of the future for testers, is understanding the stack, understanding the technology, how it's being built, because that drives the questions. That means you know how to test it. What else? I actually think teams will need less testers because the trend is developers are picking up more testing and checking. So I think the more checking developers pick up, the less testers will be needed. And I hate to say that on a call full of testers or test leaders, but I've seen it with my own eyes. When I joined we had over 100 testers, and when I left, we had about 40. It's no coincidence. The reason being the tools are changing. The reason being devs are picking up those checks because they know they've got to build checks into the microservice pipeline or through the API or around their unit checks. So the amount of checking they're doing is improving and increasing. So guess what? The amount of testing needed at the UI and throughout the stack is reducing. So the tester will need to evolve to be an SME who can coach and do. And what about the test manager? I'm rushing through this because I want to get into the other panelists to get their feedback. The test manager role, I am evidence of what is happening to the test manager role. So I left Very last Tuesday, okay? So the role of the test manager is changing and evolving. Some say the test manager role is dead. I totally disagree. I think that's totally wrong. It's not. We need to be moving and shaping and changing. So how am I going to shape and change? Well, there was a session last week with Chris Thacker where he spoke about going into being head of engineering. I think test managers make great agile coaches. I think they make great scrum masters. The role of the test manager is still there, but there's many hats we need to wear. Those hats are changing, and we need to learn how to change those hats really, really quickly. The roles I'm going for now are not necessarily test roles. You know, I'm looking at the head of tech roles. I'm looking at head of agile roles. I'm looking at agile coach roles, as well as your good old, test manager roles. So in a nutshell, I think that is a very quick dump of what's in my head around the future of testing. And now I'd love the feedback of the panelists to probe a bit deeper and prove me wrong.
Fantastic. Cheers for that, Leigh. Any of the panelists have any comments?
Oh, it's like being devil's advocate. So I'm not here to prove Leigh wrong at all. a bit of tennis now. I'm probably going to agree with a lot of he said. And when he was talking about what we've seen with changes, we saw a long time ago the offshore model came. Then after a while, people didn't really make the offshore model work. Then we went near shore, and then we went to onshore, and especially with agile brought us more onshore. And then now we've got a mix of onshore and offshore. And I think that what are the skills that we've built up with agile. Where he said, it was a lot better to have people face to face. I think that now that everyone is pretty much offshore to a certain degree, because you're not in the office, you're not there working face to face. People are having to relearn those skills, and I think that's going to be that'll have a few changes. So I think that you will have a mix of off, near, and on, like you did before, but more democratized and more all at the same level, because everyone is working in the same way, the same fashion. Apart from time zones and apart from culture and background. So I think that the way the future works is the way that it looks. I think, and I think that it's opened up the teams. It's opened up the agile teams to people from different areas, which people would automatically, oh my gosh, it's negative. They'd be going for the cheapest option. But we've already learned that the cheapest option didn't work. That's what the offshore model was driven back in my Capgemini days. Hopefully no one's on here from Capgemini, but the offshore model was all about getting to the clients and giving them the cheapest price. And then we realized it's all about quality. And now all of a sudden, I'm sure that Leigh is quite possibly applying for jobs in London, Bristol, Birmingham, Bolton, all over. Because if you are working from home, I've talked to people, recruiters, and I've seen that now companies are starting to say that location doesn't really matter. Especially in the short term and even in the long term, you'll be able to work from anywhere. So I don't know what others are thinking about that sort of location based.
Cheers for that, Stuart. Stuart or Beth, any comments to add?
So yeah, I think coming back to Leigh's comment about the toolbox, I think this is how I've seen the role change massively over time, and that some of that is moving into more agile ways of working, and the adoption of the iterative type approach to fail fast and this kind of thing. But I think we're now in a world where people are actually putting more emphasis on quality. So, and testing is part of that. And there's, conversations are part of, how we build quality in early, having, collaborating and stuff like that. And I think, from what Leigh was saying, that, the role of what would normally be the tester, i.e. you test the software, tell us where it's not working, is now around how we build quality in, and really championing that with our engineers, our product owners, our stakeholders, and really getting people to think about those things more and more. The automated checks that we put in place, they can be done by our engineers. That's why we want to shift left. They're the things that are more simple to do, and that's not knocking anybody that codes, right? It's fact that, if you can code, you can write these tests. These checks. So I think the real benefit then comes from exploratory nature type testing techniques, really building and architecting solutions that are testable as well. And that's a real big thing that we focused on, is how do we build for testability? So ensuring that the guys are involved in those architectural conversations, whereas before it just been, here's a diagram of what it looks like, crack on. Now they're involved in those conversations, and the forefront of that is how we would test it. So I think, naturally those things are going to evolve more and more. Yes, naturally I think there will be less sort of pigeonhole testers, if you like, but but I think the evolution of their skill sets with the mindsets they already carry. I love this world, right? I keep saying to my guys, the world is your oyster, because the breadth of knowledge you can gain in this space, you can turn your hat to anything. You can move yourself into a DevOps engineer role. You could go into engineering. You could go into coaching. You could basically do anything you want, right? So don't ever think that you're not going to have something to do in the future, because absolutely you can. And I think that's something that's really important to remember. The breadth of knowledge we have and learn through testing and QA is so vast. It's crazy.
For sure. Cheers for that, Stuart. I think when last time when we spoke last week, I think it was you, Leigh, that mentioned that, especially when it, like, even with testing in general, the tester's role, rather than just doing the actual testing themselves, might actually move towards more of a coaching role.
Yeah.
And sort of progressing in that way. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that the test coaching is key. So stop me if this sounds familiar to anybody who's been dropped from a waterfall to an agile world, but we grab up a tester from a waterfall world on a Friday, and on a Monday we go, right, you're going into this agile team, we drop them in, and all of a sudden they go from being, I don't know, let's call it a functional manual tester, to an agile team where everyone in the agile team expects them to know everything about testing. They need to be a test manager, a test architect, test performance tester, test security tester, test automation tester, anything that has the word test in it, they're meant to understand it. And the reality is, they don't, because I've not met a single tester that ticks all of those boxes in all my life. I've never met a test manager that's ticked all those boxes in all my life. So the role of the coaching is really important, because if we do want the devs to pick up that checking, and they are best placed to do that, we have to coach them. So the tester has to be really comfortable with pairing with devs and encourage them to do that. And that thing about coaching the business as well, that's just as important. So the shift left is your developer and building in testability, as Stuart Day said, but the shift right and coaching, being able to engage the business and coach them to understand tech, coach them to understand how they can add value. Because people in the business, again, will be the right people to test the product rather than a tester or the squad or a developer. So this coaching thing that the testers have to move into, and test managers, is absolutely key, because I don't think there's many people in an agile squad that can do that. I think our skills suit us to do that. We usually see the product from beginning to end, don't we? We're usually the only people in a project that sees the finished product. Developers write their little slather and off it goes in the old world. Now testers see everything, because our skills are around question asking. I think that breeds the coaching role. And my prediction will be that maybe in 3-4 years' time, testers' hands-on testing will probably be in the 20 to 30% mark. And the other 70% will be the question asking, the coaching, the pairing with devs, the pairing with developers, setting up bug bashes for the business to come in and do their bit. I think that will be the role of the tester. Understanding, becoming that T-shape as well. Be a tester, but understand everything else that's going around you.
With that being said, then, so I think it's quite interesting, like, sort of understanding whose responsibility it is to so say if you were to bring that sort of process into an organization, would it be on the test manager to essentially go to the people above and say, this is what testers can do, or how, like, what would your thoughts on that be?
I think test manager's part of the test manager role is to sell visions. We have to be salespeople. I'm forever selling ideas and selling change. And yes, to take the other people in tech on board, because when people's roles change, you can't just do it in silo, because that's what usually leads to failure. You've got to, communicate, sell the new vision, explain the why. Why are we doing this? It's because software is so complex now. A tester can't be held accountable for quality. It's the whole bloody team, right? So that is a message. So the why is it's complex. The why is testers don't have all the skills, but they can definitely own the discussion and be the champion. As someone said earlier, someone said they need to be the champion. I think it was Stuart Day. Absolutely nailed on, correct. So you've got to sell the why. We're doing this because of these reasons. Code is complex. Testers don't have all the skills, but guess what? The squad usually do. And if not, there's friends of the squad you can pull in to help.